right, so today you may want to go grab a snack because we're going to dig into something that gets a little spicy. We're going to talk about when people really heavily rely on, I have experience at interviews. When candidates tell you, well, I've got experience, and they kind of put their chest out because they think they're a badass because they got some experience, right? What we're going to do today is we're going to flip that around. And we're going to take a look at when you're doing when you have applications in front of you and you're doing interviews, how heavily do you rely on this? What thoughts start to go? Do you get excited when you see that on an application? Oh, they got experience. Oh, this one is going to fix all my problems, right? Are you asking the right questions? Let's dig into this a little bit. But before we do, I want you to do a couple of things for me. So I want you to like this podcast. I want you to hit subscribe and hit that notification bell, because these podcasts, as we drop them, we're going to help you with 4 core areas of your business: attracting, developing, engaging, and retaining better people. So I don't want you to miss any of this. This question I get asked all the time by hiring managers, and hiring managers ask this question: what is your experience? What is your experience? This is what they'll ask candidates. Hiring managers, they look for it. It's like they have to have it. It's like a drug. Like, I need people with experience. And why do you say that? Most people say that because they're lazy. They want people to come right in and fix all their problems. They don't want to do the work. They don't want to train and develop people. They don't want to ask the hard questions. They just want to go about their day. They got things to do. We just got to fix this problem. We'll push a little of the sand over it, and then we just go to work, right? But what does it really mean? What does it really mean when people say that they have experience, right? It could be positive. It could be all the things that we're hoping for. It could mean that maybe, right? Maybe you hit gold and the candidate can walk right in the door and start working. Very little training. They just walk in, start rocking and rolling, right? They add massive impact right away. Doesn't happen all the time. In fact, it happens, it's very far and few between when that happens, right? But is it always helpful? Does it really mean that if someone has experience, they're better than somebody else? Is it the right question to ask if people have experience? Right? And again, I'm going to say, are we lazy, right? Are we looking to just, get people in a function, into a role quicker and fix our problem? Is experience always good? Does experience mean that things come with it, right? Like people are set in their ways. They're not willing to change. Maybe they got an attitude. They got experience, so they think they're better and they're going to do things their way, right? I don't need to be directed. You don't need to tell me what to do. Well, I do it this way. Well, I did it this way over here. Right? When I was over there, we did this. Well, then why don't you go back there? If things were so good while you were over there, why are you here? Right? But see, we don't ask that question. We're thinking it, but we don't say it. It goes in the brain, it doesn't hit the tongue. So, does experience mean, and I've literally heard someone said this to me before, you can't tell me anything that I don't already know. Oh, man, the stuff that was going around in my brain when I heard that comment. Think about this, right? I was driving down with a friend of mine. We were driving down the road, and there was a sign at this restaurant. It's actually a friend, a kid I graduated from high school's restaurant, and he put on the sign, experienced bartender, looking for an experienced bartender. And I remember my friend saying, oh, look, he wants someone that steals. I just started laughing, right? Does experience mean that people are insubordinate, right? If they don't get their own way. Like, if I don't get this, then I'm out of here. Does experience mean we're just going to learn what the person that they worked for before already knows? Think about that. So are you thinking a little bit differently about I have experience? That's what this podcast today is I'm trying to help you do, is to just look at it differently. So I want to tell you this story. I have this guy that, a restaurant general manager of a real popular, he runs one location, but the chain that he works for, they own 100 locations, right? Let's just call the guy Tim. So Tim's been around the block. In fact, his wife actually used to work for me years and years and years ago. And he understands how to motivate people. He really gets it, right? But, man, he told me a story while we were sitting there talking, and it just blew me away. I couldn't even believe what I was hearing. People say, it was a 180, right? I think this was like a 720. This guy spun around in so many circles, I couldn't even believe what the story he told me. So he was real excited, right? And he wanted to tell me the story about this new line cook that he hired. So he had just hired this guy for the kitchen. This guy had all this experience from this other restaurant down the street. He made all these grand promises of how wonderful he was, all the things that he did. And as I'm sitting there listening to Tim talk, I'm like, yeah, man, hiring to him is sexy, right? It's, he brings a couple people in, he gets this real excited feeling, I've solved this problem. The only thing as he was talking, I could think of is that it's a temporary feeling. It's bullshit, right? Hiring is, think about a wheel, like a bike wheel, right? And all the little spokes of everything you need to do to have the right people in your business, to attract, develop, engage, and retain your employees, right? Hiring is just one spoke. It's one piece of the wheel, right? There's all this other stuff, right? But we get all excited about hiring and we think we've solved all our problems when it's just the beginning. There's other spokes in the wheel that hold that wheel together, that give it its strength and its power. So hiring, if that was the only spoke in the wheel, that wheel would be worthless. So there's other things here we got to consider. If you make a wrong hire, right, what happens, right? The person leaves, or worse, they drive your good people away, right? They cause chaos and disorder, right? So what happens now? We've solved nothing when we hire the wrong person or people. So I got 3 questions for you. So we're going to break these down. Do we have the same thinking that we've always had from years ago? Today the problems are different. People are different. So are we trying to solve today's problems with the thinking we did yesterday, 10, 15, 20 years ago?
Today's episode is sponsored by Heavenly Donuts. Tired of frozen egg sandwiches? What about fresh scrambled eggs instead? Visit us at Heavenly Donuts, 36 South Main Street, Gary, New Hampshire.
Tim followed the same thinking and the direction that we have always thought, right? Making a decision based off the promise, what the candidate was saying. When the candidate is really boasting and they're puffing, they're overstating their value in most cases, not every case, but I'm going to say 90% of them, they're boasting. They're full of shit. They're overinflating their worth, right? So, they're puffing, I like to call it, where they stick their chest out and telling you how much experience they have, how much they did for somebody else, right? So he went on to explain, and this was the part that, was killing me, right? He went on to explain that he brought this line cook in for $3 more an hour than everybody else in the kitchen, right? He started listing out all the reasons why, all the money he was going to save on training, that the guy was going to be able to jump right in. Right? He wouldn't have to invest in this guy. The guy would walk right in and be able to execute the menu, which I don't agree with, but maybe he would get there faster, but I don't think he'd be able to walk right in and know where everything is, right? He still would need some type of gestation period. So, now his thought process was strategic in nature, but it was very one-directional, right? It was scarcity focused. So, he just wanted to close the candidate, get a good line cook, keep functioning ASAP, as fast as I can, right? Go fix all the other problems I have, because I got 97 problems and I want to get rid of this one, right? So the next question is, what about all the other parts of experience, right? So my response to him was, all right, Tim, so you hired this guy, right? You paid him $3 more an hour than the rest of your current team. The people that have been here all this time doing it for you, the ones that have worked a very busy weekend. Has he worked weekends? Just because he flipped a steak for someone else doesn't mean that he can handle the pressure and the things that you're assuming that he can handle here, right? It makes no sense to me. And I know it sounds like I'm belittling the candidate, but I'm not, right? It's not my intent, but I just feel like if someone flipped a steak for someone else, it's not enough information, right? To classify it as that he has experience. He's saying he knows how to flip a steak, right? That's about it. Most times when candidates say this to us, then we bring them in to start and we realize we get punched in the face that we actually have to train them fully. They can't do what they say, right? So there's so many other factors here that have to be considered, right? And if you're not considering these other factors, then this is why you always end up in the same place. Right? You think one thing is going to happen and it's not. Shouldn't experience just mean the technical part of the job? Or should it mean all the other things? Like the other factors, all the other questions. Things like, did they work in the restaurant when you need them? Will they work in the restaurant when you need them to? If the candidate flipped a steak, but he didn't work during the stressful times, maybe he only worked lunch Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Well, here in your mind, right, you're assuming that he can work Friday, Saturday, and Sunday during your busy rushes or whatever, whenever the peak part of your business. In this case, it was a steak restaurant. Maybe his availability really sucked, so he only worked these little things. So you have this false expectation because of what he's saying, but you didn't ask the right questions, right? Did he do things that were super important? Like he starts working and he refuses to wear the uniform that you have to have in the kitchen. These guys in the kitchens, they wear weird coats and stuff. What if he wants to wear a t-shirt, right? And it's important to you because this guy has an open kitchen that the customers can see into the kitchen, that people have to be dressed a certain way, right? Is he willing to do that? Wouldn't you want to know that before you hired him and you made all these promises? Does he request a lot of time off? How many times you hire someone and they're like, oh, it's the summertime, and they say, oh, I forgot to tell you that, I'm going away in July, I'm going away in August for 2 weeks. And so over the next 8 weeks, they're not here, 5 of them? Wouldn't you have liked to known that before you hired them? What if they have any personal problems and they can't come to work? Do they talk negatively, right? Maybe they're a mumbler. They like to mumble things under their breath, right? And they aggravate all the coworkers and all the customers, right? Because they got a big mouth, right? Wouldn't you want to know this stuff? If you can, before you can vet a lot of this stuff out just by asking better questions. You can ask candid questions like, is this person going to break? If there's policies and procedures that are important to you, I don't know, maybe you have a no smoking policy. Wouldn't it have been nice to know that this guy smokes or doesn't smoke before you hire them? When something as important as smoking is as important to you? There's just a lot of questions and things that you have to dig in deeper before you just make the decision on they got experience, right? And of course, at the interview, they're going to tell you what you want to hear, right? They're going to omit the truth. Now, this is part of the lying. Like I tell people all the time, the lying happens at the interview. Now, the problem with lying is there's different levels and different stages of lying, right? People fabricate things. People just omit things. It's not always just, they tell you a direct lie. Lies come in all kinds of different fashions and different packages. Do you have a system in place to assure that you call out these very crucial and critical decision-making, I like to call these performance indicators, right? These things that you got to have. I mean, Tim was going to pay this guy $3 more an hour than everybody else because of an assumption. He had no systematic approach to get this information out of the person, right? When I started telling this to Tim and I started flipping this around on him, he started agreeing. He was intrigued in the conversation, right? He actually said, man, he goes, when I walked over here to talk to you, I was going to, figured I'd talk for 10 minutes and get rid of you. He goes, but man, this is very interesting, right? How many operators, you may be one of them, they don't go this deep with people, right? They just kind of do it fast. They already made the decision to hire the person just based off of what they saw or one thing that they heard. I have experience. And they're like, oh, good enough for me. Heartbeat optional sometimes, right? Listen, this discipline is very important because if you don't have this discipline in place, you're going to have 2 types of pain that are going to come from this if you don't have this discipline in place. You're going to have a short-term pain or a long-term pain. So if you hire someone with personality, let's say, right? They have a great personality, but maybe they're not technical. You got to train and develop them. That's a short-term pain, right? You have to invest a little bit of time in them up front, but man, they show up to work. They do all the things. Customers love them. The people around, they fit with the team. The short-term pain is the front, but the long-term pain is the dangerous one. The long-term pain is you bring in a person because they have experience, and then they come in, and then now you start to learn, all the skeletons start to fall out of the closet. It's amazing how they did everything for everybody else, but the minute they start working for you, there's a gray cloud that just follows them around on top of them and rains on them, and everything's wrong. They can't do anything. All of a sudden, the weekends that they said they could do, they can't do. So see, now you start to have long-term pain because now maybe this pisses off one of your good people and they get disengaged and stop working. Why work hard? You just gave this person $3 more an hour when I've been working here for a year and you didn't even consider me. These are the kind of questions. Your decision has an impact, has a domino effect on your entire team. unless you have a process, a system. This is where most of the damage is done, right? And this is where the real costs begin to add up. Because it wasn't just that decision. That decision had an impact that impacted somebody else, somebody else's attitude, somebody else's engagement, right? And that's what's most important. This is the kind of stuff that causes the order inaccuracies, the guest service disruptions, right? When someone calls out or someone doesn't show up to work, right? When the person says they're going to be here and they're not. When the person can't count, now you have cash shortages. Because this wolf in sheep's clothing, you allowed them to come in. You're the gatekeeper. And you allowed the wolf to walk right in the front door because you didn't ask the right questions, because you got lazy. I mean, let's call it what it is. You got lazy and you didn't ask those hard questions. You just wanted to solve a problem, stick the square peg in the round hole, and away you go. Anytime that you try to cheat out on training, it can't be good. It can't go anywhere good. Have you ever heard the saying, the leopard can't change its spots? Well, this is what happens when people lie to you at interviews. They're who they are. They're not going to change. That's why you have to have a system and a process that if you don't catch it here, you catch it over here, right? Because people don't change. They may change for a little while. They may change for a few weeks. They can fake it for a while, but they're not faking it for a long period of time. They're not faking it for 60 days. No way. So you can't just overlook these things and hope that they fit in the box that you need. So now your good people are stressed. The people that promised you the world don't come in, don't do what they say. Now that workload gets shifted back onto the other people. Your people get frustrated when the leadership doesn't hold other people accountable, right? And it seems like the newer people get away with the things that were never acceptable before. And what do? You hide behind the stories, or what do your people do, right? They hide behind the stories that people are different today, right? People aren't built the way that they're used to, right? This is the stuff that we hear. But the worst part is you're being sold a false bill of goods right from day one. Actually, day zero, because they haven't started working for you yet. You had the ability to ask the right questions, and you didn't. You let them in the door. And now you cause stress and pressure and put it on your whole team. Remember, it's these experienced people that we really have to watch out for. And if you're not careful, then you actually take steps backwards, right? And you have very little recourse because you let them in and you made promises to them about compensation, and you didn't set any of the parameters up front. You made the bad deal up front. Tim made a bad deal up front. He paid someone $3 more an hour that potentially can't do any of the stuff that he really wanted that person or needed that person to do. He tried to cheat, right? He made a poor emotional decision. Now, it was because he had no protection mechanism, right? He had no system in place. He had experience. He's been a manager for 15 years, 20 years. I do this all the time. I know how to do this, right? But he never based his compensation on the facts, on the things that were required, because he didn't even know the list of the things. He knew in his head what he wanted, but he didn't have it in writing to show the person, this is what I need. This is how you get paid if you do the things that I need. Instead, you left a bunch of assumptions out there, right? And when they said they had experience, you assumed that they could do everything that you needed. So where do you go from here? You feel like, if you get a few candidates, then you'll be able to have the time now to work on all this stuff and fix all this stuff and make a new plan and go forward, right? But because you're stuck in this loop, this perpetual loop, where I need people, I hire some people, then they leave, and I'm right back where I started, and you keep doing it over and over and over again, you're right back. You always go right back to where you started, right? So you're never able to create better unless you begin to think differently. So I agree with the statements that, people aren't the same. People aren't built the way that they used. I agree with that. That saying backs up the point that the employee pool is evolving, right? They're changing. They're more entitled than ever. They take less responsibilities. They're getting weaker every single day, less skilled, and we have to keep adjusting. So if you're bringing someone in to help the organization solely based on I have experience, then shouldn't they actually have experience, right? That's helpful and doesn't compound and make your stress worse. So here's the kick in the pants. You really don't know any of what the people are talking about, their experience, good or bad, if it's true or false, until after they start working. Because at that stage, the interview stage, the hiring stage, they could be lying. Most times they're lying, right? So all the talk is hypothetical. It's what they're saying they can do and not what they actually do. So this whole model has to be flipping around. We call this flipping the script, right? We've been doing it wrong for so long. The metrics and the compensation indicators have to really follow the candidate after the hire. You can talk about it all up front, right? They're giving you empty promises. It's like a sales call, right? But this is why I built the SMART system, because I was sick and tired of exactly this. So now when we do the hire, we tell them everything they want to hear. We say, hey man, if you just do this and you do this and you do this, you'll get everything that you want. But what happens when you don't do it? What happens? There has to be an action for not doing it. So I want you to think differently next time you see on an application, I have experience. Or you hear someone say, I have experience. I want you to actually go into the mode that now you have to ask even more questions. Now, all of the questions you should ask should be about the technical part of the job. Can they do the things that you need? Can they fit in with your team? When they say they can walk in and they can get up to speed quickly, what does that mean? Make them explain it to you. And then what happens if they start working and they don't do what they say? Or at that point, then they realize they actually need some training. What happens then? These are the things that we have to solve before they ever start. All right, so remember at the beginning of this, I asked you to do 3 things. I wanted you to like this podcast, I wanted you to hit subscribe, and I wanted you to hit that notification bell. So that way we can have more conversations just like this on how to attract, develop, engage, and retain better people. All right, ciao for now. I'll see you next week.